Welcome, everyone, to this lecture that is part of the series Illicit Objects, Lived Religion. I'm Joseph Sanzo, the director of the Center for the Study of Lived Religion. And today I am very happy to introduce our speaker who works with me here in the center, Piera Talin. In particular, she is a postdoctoral fellow at the Center for the Study of Lived Religion at Foscari. And she researches lived religion in ayahuasca religions and religious movements and ritual practices. Her joint PhD focused on the circulation and reinventions of ayahuasca ritual healing in urban contexts between Brazil and Europe, and her shared PhD was at the University of Amsterdam and the School of Advanced Studies on the Social Sciences in Paris. This lecture is based on her research that she's been conducting at the Center for the Study of Lived Religion, and much of which has been published in the journal of the center, which is called Quotidiana, Journal for the Study of Lived Religion, and her essay appeared in the first issue of that, and that essay is also fully open access, so you're able to see it on the Quotidia, Journal for the Study of Lived Religion website. So without further ado, Piera, please give us your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you all for being here today. This lecture examines how members of the ayahuasca religions in Italy have adapted their ritual practices after the ban on ayahuasca occurred in Italy in 2022. It is, as introduced, it is based on ethnographic research conducted in 2024-2025 within the Santo Daime groups, Santo Daime religion in Italy, which constitute probably the largest community of ayahuasca users in Italy. We will explore the impact of this prohibition, both on ritual practices and everyday life, focusing on ritual adaptation, the substitution of ayahuasca with informed water, as well as the impact of this legal change on personal experiences and healing trajectories of the members, focusing on physical, psychological, and spiritual aspects. As introduced, this research is also published in our journal for the study of lived religion, Quotidiana. So you can go back to it whenever you want for details and the theoretical analysis. I briefly start with an introduction to ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a psychoactive substance used by several indigenous groups in the upper Amazon region. It is principally consumed in shamanic settings for purposes of divination, healing, hunt, witchcraft, and community cohesion. The term ayahuasca comes from the Quechua language, and it is composed of the two words aya and huasca, and means the vine of the souls, of the dead, of the ancestors. It is not the only name given to this substance, but ayahuasca is the most widespread term in its international expansion. Indigenous representatives reiterate that they do recognize the term ayahuasca and its generalized use, even though it does not replace local names such as Nishipai, Huni, Kapi, and even the ayahuasca religions generally do not refer to it with the name ayahuasca, but rather through specific names given to their sacrament, such as Santo Daime, Daime, Vegetal, or Ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is thus an umbrella term that encompasses many meanings, contexts, different cultural contexts, at the crossroads between religion, spirituality, and medicine in different countries at a global level. In its multiple uses, ayahuasca is understood in very different ways and even contrasting ontologies and epistemologies. So, for example, governments and public authorities, especially outside of the native South American context, have often reduced ayahuasca to being just an illicit drug and its possession as a drug trafficking, isolating its chemical compound from the broader context in which rituals, communities, health systems, cosmologies, and politics are all entangled, are all embedded. For members of the ayahuasca religions, it is a sacrament comparable to the Eucharistic host to the body of Christ as in Catholicism. In native settings, it is considered often as a planta de poder, a plant giving power, a spirit imparting teachings, a sacred medicine. Differently, in biomedical perspectives, this medicine is intended as a potential pharmaceutical treatment. For many others, ayahuasca, it is an interesting new product in the market of wellness and, let's say, new age ceremonies. So, ayahuasca is a brew prepared principally from certain plants, mostly the vine Banisteriopsis fuscapi, which is scraped, smashed, and then boiled together with water and the leaves of Psychotria viridis, that is a shrub. They are both native of the Amazonian forest. Ayahuasca religions primarily use the most common formula, Banisteriopsis fuscapi and Psychotria viridis, but in different but there are different concentrations and different parts of the plant that can give different effects. So, for example, religious leader can choose a different daime for healing works, healing rituals, or festive one, for example. We will see that this is one of the potential changes that the regulation of ayahuasca in Italy will bring in the Italian context. As there are multiple ritual forms, there are clearly also a multiplicity of preparations, both in traditional and globalized context. Here I give you an example. There are powdered extracts, leaf and dried plants. There are synthesized materials which are packaged and adapted for international shipping, and also reformulated in new preparations that can be, for example, anahuasca, that are substances that mimic the effects of ayahuasca, and, for example, pharmahuasca, that are the preparations that are dedicated to pharmaceuticals innovations. My research, indeed, is also informed by previous research conducted in the Netherlands following the 2018 legal change, when the government withdrew the right to use ritually in religious rituals ayahuasca. So when illegal prohibition occurs, people respond in very different ways. For example, ceasing their ritual practices, or going underground, or replacing ayahuasca with other substances, such as psilohuasca, that was a legal solution, let's say, a new ayahuasca preparation that was not banned in the flourishing market of psychedelic ceremonies in the Netherlands. Differently, the large institutionalized religious movements, such as the Santo Daime, on which I focus today, and the UDV, that is the other União do Vegetal, another religion, ayahuasca religion, have constantly engaged in legal actions to defend their ritual, their right to practice their religion. In in several countries, as Enrique Antunes Fernandez introduced in the first lecture on ayahuasca that we had in this lecture series. The three Brazilian ayahuasca religions are called Santo Daime, União do Vegetal, or Divé, Union of the Plant, of the Vegetal, and Barquinha, Little Boat, and are all three founded on the sacramental use of ayahuasca. They emerged in the Amazon at the beginning of the last century, and they are related to the rubber economy and the migration of workers from the northeast of Brazil during the various phases of the rubber economy. Ayahuasca religions combine in different ways a strong Catholic influence with Spiritism, Amazonian elements, and also aspects of the Afro-Brazilian tradition from the northeast of Brazil. Since the 80s, ayahuasca religions spread to the south of Brazil in big cities like Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. And in the 90s, they spread across different countries worldwide, becoming a Brazilian example of modern transnational religious movements. Let's now delve into the Italian context that you can see some pictures on the right about the community in Assisi. Santo Daime has been present in Italy since the 90s. The first informal ritual took place in the early 90s, and over the following years, the community gradually grew, initially around two main locations, in Assisi and near Genoa, before spreading also to other regions. Since its early developments, the Santo Daime religion in Italy faced legal persecution at various times. In 1995 already, the police intervened during a Santo Daime ritual for the first time. Armed officers entered the ritual space where participants were already seated in a ritual formation, waiting for the beginning of the ritual, meditating, praying, and quietly conversing. And the police in that moment seized the liters of the daime dedicated to the ceremony. 1995, then there were the similar situations also in other European countries. Between 2004 and 2005, police seized also about 30 liters of daime at an airport in Italy. And this continued in the main Santo Daime community at the time, so Assisi, Genoa, and also Reggio Emilia. And this was followed also by the arrest of religious leaders along with several other members. And the arrest lasted between 2 to 3 days, so few days to several months. These are two of the principal legal proceedings that have taken place since the 90s. Over the years, the Italian Santo Daime community has won 5 court cases. Every time the daime was seized, the Santo Daime religion also filed appeals to have their sacrament returned, and they won. So the daime always returned to the churches. So even though ayahuasca remained in a legal gray area until 2022, these precedents created a relatively favorable situation, shaping both the Santo Daime practices, and so their attitude, and other ritual uses of ayahuasca between, in practice, 2005 and 2022. On the 14th of March 2022, the Italian Ministry of Health introduced a new law banning the use of ayahuasca in the country. This new law was signed without any prior consultation with the religious groups in the country, Santo Daime and União do Vegetal, or with other scholars and institutions working in the field of ayahuasca and the broader field of drug policy around the sacred use of plant medicines or also the psychedelics, either nationally nor internationally. So for many, this new law came as a complete shock in a certain way. The decree classifies ayahuasca, its extracts, powdered forms, the plants Banisteriopsis capi and Psychotria viridis, and also alkaloids such as armine, armaline, as Schedule 1 substances, in practice at the same level of hard drugs like heroin and pharmaceutical drugs that are controlled. The main psychoactive component of ayahuasca, that is DMT, has been scheduled since 1971. But this does not mean that the religious or ritual use of ayahuasca was illegal. In many cases, it is exactly permitted through regulatory frameworks that recognize indigenous rights and religious freedom, as most of the South American countries, as it is the case of most of South American countries, where the ritual use of ayahuasca is allowed, as well as in certain countries also the therapeutic use as a traditional medicine. So let's say that Italy could have followed other existing ways to regulate ayahuasca without making it illegal in the strictest way. Soon, the Italian Santo Daime community reached the news and shared with me reaction and emotions. As one person put it, from one evening to the next, my spiritual life was forbidden. Shortly after, the Italian Santo Daime leaders convened and agreed to respond to the decree through legal action. They also agreed to continue their ritual practice in the country, temporarily suspending the use of ayahuasca and replacing it with water. As one of the leaders said, we don't agree, but we respect the law. He also continued it. The choice to conduct the rituals with water is a conscious decision to maintain the firmness of the Santo Daime spiritual work in Italy, even in the absence of the sacrament. Our spiritual school requires our sacrament, the Santo Daime. So what I'm doing in this lecture is to present modification of the Santo Daime rituals, such as the suspension of ayahuasca use, its replacement with water, and the practice of traveling abroad for ceremonies, leading clearly to new forms of pilgrimage. Because all these forms are adaptations, negotiations, and also form of kind of resistance. They are tactics, I argue, in Bourdieu's term. Indeed, for Bourdieu, there are strategies and tactics. Strategies are actions put into practice by groups in power, which adapt actions to ever-changing conditions, so that groups in power continue to dominate to reproduce, let's say, established and dominant structures of powers. While tactics are actions put into practice by groups that are dominated by powerful others. In this sense, we are understanding like a small marginal religion, modern religion, and the state, right? So through tactics, people create their own space and resist oppressions because they are not passive or not completely without power. So in response to the decree, the Santo Daime, the União do Vegetal, and another small group in southern Italy filed an appeal requesting a temporary suspension of the ministerial measure. The Council of State answered that the appropriate course of action for the Santo Daime would be the controlled and regulated use of the substance through an exemption-based authorization. So since then, the Santo Daime community has been involved in an ongoing battle, trying to gain recognition while also figuring out what is required to adapt their practices to arrive to reach an exemption-based system. One of the most recent developments in this process, that is a thing of the last days, is that probably what is required is to stabilize the substance, meaning that in order to use their sacrament, the Santo Daime groups in Italy would have to pass through a pharmaceutical laboratory. So you can really see the interconnection, the complex entanglements between religion and medicine when we are dealing in the state, when we are dealing with this kind of practices involving indigenous sacred plants. After the Santo Daime Italian leaders decided to interrupt ayahuasca use, each local group adapted logistics, calendar, ritual practices according to their specific context. All groups linked to the religious institutions that is called Aiseflu adopted the use of water, even though many members left, and so the number of the participants, of the members of the Santo Daime is now definitely smaller. Some groups use tap water or spring water from their local mountain area, but most of the groups use acqua diamante, or more generally, acqua informata, informed water. These are names given to natural water, which people elevate energetically, according to them, rising its vibrational frequency through prayers, words, crystals, and images based on the theory of water memory. There are several ways to prepare it, like following the lunar phases, but some members just put a jug of water next to a small bottle of daime for a certain time. The proposal to use informed water came from a long-term member who is now responsible for preparing the acqua diamante, the diamond water, used in the rituals. When I interviewed Germana, a pseudonym, she told me that everything started with a dream she had many years ago, long before the current legal situation. In the dream, there was a Santo Daime ritual, and she was sitting at the table, so she was in a position of leadership of the ritual. The only participants to this ritual were children between 5 and 8 years old. So she began to wonder what she was supposed to do. By the way, in the ayahuasca religions and also in some indigenous groups, children are allowed to drink daime in small quantities, but they are not allowed to participate to any kind of ritual, just the festive one. So they are not allowed to the healing and the concentration work. So only the celebrations for the saints. So returning to the dream, Germana poured some daime in a jug of water and gave it to the children. When she woke up, she remembered such particular dream. So she asked 3 drops of daime from her ritual leader. With the dropped, they count 3 drops of daime, 9 drops of water, and then, always praying, she multiplied it until 1 liter that she stored as acqua di daime, daime water. In 2022, when, due to the situation, they reopened the bottles of acqua di daime, and it was still fresh. So they started reproducing it 5 liters at a time. So they use more or less 5 liters of water in each ritual, let's say a large ritual. Germana explained that this is all about a vibrational level, as you can't achieve with water what you can do with the daime because of their very different chemical composition. Acqua diamante is a kind of homeopathic dosage. So there is no daime in the several liters of water that they have informed, as also the police confirmed when they seized water during a ritual in Assis soon after the decree, because they came to control the situation. Water is served in the same way that the daime is served, so in little glasses in two lines separating men and women, singing the hymns dedicated to the Santo Daime. Many of the people I interviewed emphasized that they felt initially as they drank daime, kind of a placebo effect, while others said they didn't get any particular sensations. They felt the memory of the daime, they said. But they also all emphasized that they had not taken into account how exhausting it would be to perform such demanding rituals of singing and dancing and playing musical instruments without the daime, considering that they can last also 12 hours. Indeed, at the beginning of this new phase, most of the groups maintain the usual ritual structure, so with long times, music, forms of dance, wearing their ritual uniforms, and even fasting as they were drinking daime. This led many groups to adapt then to a smaller scale because of this exhaustion, as fewer people were available for the overall organization that requires a lot, and also for the decoration of the space before and after. Even those who stayed, continuing the rituals without the sacrament, questioned a lot about these adaptations and their meaning. Some remained simply because they felt it was something they had to do for their religious community. But it took often a lot of time for them to come to the terms that the state imposed a ban on their spiritual life and so on the use of ayahuasca. But also for physical and psychological and spiritual perspective, the impact was very important. All the people I interviewed stated that interrupting the use of ayahuasca does not lead to any withdrawal symptoms of cravings, because they explained clearly that, and it is confirmed by scientific approaches, that the ayahuasca, and so the daime, does not create any physical or psychological addiction. But people noted a diminished psychological or physical well-being. For example, Sabrina explained that the Santo Daime had with a recurring depression, highlighting how the Santo Daime is for her both a spiritual and a therapeutic journey. I read now here, for me, Santo Daime was truly the saint who lifted me out of a recurring depression. I struggled with feeling like I didn't belong in this world, but Santo Daime helped me re-enter the world and also start going to the church again. Now I pray daily and I attend Mass every 2 days. Even though they took away the daime, I don't want to distance myself from God for any reason. At first, after stopping daime, things felt normal, but then depression knocked on my door again, bringing back a taste I hadn't felt in a long time. I see it is looming again. Now I have more tools to cope, but when I was drinking daime, this didn't happen. It is not just an antidepressant, it also brings social connection through our ritual practices. So the legal ban impacted also the relational and communal dimension of the Santo Daime religion, as many left, as I introduced. The members remaining in the Santo Daime explained their initial sadness also for losing several people that they used to see regularly and considered important relationships that are part of the Irmandade, that is how it's called, the brotherhood, let's say. Other members, for example, explained that they stopped attending the Santo Daime ritual, but they started attending church, reading the gospel or the Quran, or practicing yoga. Others left any ritual practice, taking this new time as a possibility to spend more time with family and friends or the other activities. The last aspect I would like to show is about traveling. As a transnational religious movement, traveling has always been a central dimension of the Santo Daime religion. While the Santo Daime ceased renting venues in Italy in 2022, they have in turn started renting spaces and organizing trips abroad to countries where ayahuasca is permitted. But traveling abroad comes with a range of challenges that members have to navigate. Things like financial constraints, gender roles, caregiving responsibilities, and flexibility at work. So for these reasons, only some of the members are actually able to travel. This highlights how these transformations in ritual practices caused by drug regulation are closely tied to issues of class, gender, so in certain cases also race, and health. Some of the Italian members I interviewed have never traveled abroad in the last years because they could not have the conditions to travel, while others usually travel for 3 to 4 times abroad per year. In the conclusion, I would like to propose some brief reflections about the notion of illicit as we are discussing in this lecture series in light of the Santo Daime context in Italy. So one aspect of the illicitness is that it is transitory and it is processual. It is shaped by the dynamics and the processes involving not only religions, but also the state and medicine, and even more in its, let's say, transnational dimension, and so all the differences that are involved in a global perspective. This case also shows that it becomes transitional and processual because it involves a substance that is at the same time a sacred substance, but also a potentially therapeutic medicine and also an illicit drug. So it also emerged that illicitness is a kind of form of order, as it emerged from the expansion of multiple uses and multiple forms of materialities of ayahuasca. What the decree shows is that what they tried to put was any form that they could find about what is this thing called ayahuasca. So it is so making it illicit is a form of order that the state give to such multiplicity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Piera. Wonderful presentation. Do we have any questions? Does anybody like to ask a question? If not, I can go ahead and start. Okay, so I have a question specifically about the process of potentially figuring out a way of making it legal or at least accepted through laboratories. And what are the role of pharmaceutical companies and other? I mean, are there other kind of economic factors that might want to kind of take advantage of this particular psychedelic for their own financial interests that are then working with governments to try to basically co-opt this practice? What do you kind of see are the dynamics involved in terms of this kind of regulation through laboratory, etc.?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe, for this question. So let's say that it is not the first time in history that pharmaceutical industry is interested in the potential efficacy of ayahuasca for different, let's say, mental health issues like addiction, depression, etc. And some processes involved a battle of several years not to patent ayahuasca, because the problem is that clearly the first thing that pharmaceutical industry can do is to patent a brew or plants, but they fortunately are protected also as indigenous knowledge, and so there are some of this process that ended in a good solution, but it is always something that can be on. It is one of the big risks. Now, to say that, let's say, the Italian government is moving together with pharmaceutical companies, probably the Italian government is more interested in a prohibitionist approach to ayahuasca. And this is what is emerging also from the ways that this ban occurred, but also the sensationalistic news that are that in the several years were always shared around ayahuasca, even though clearly there are some cases that require a lot of attention and care in Italy. Let's say that it can be understood also as a preliminary, as an example, because in any case, when you stabilize a substance, clearly you have a route, a path that can be walked in the future, and also it complicated really the situation, because in a certain way it erased the traditional knowledge. When I was saying that in the Santo Daime, as in a lot of other traditions, there are in the same religion, in the same group, different qualities of the daime that can be used in very different rituals. So, for example, for the festive rituals, you have a kind of ayahuasca that is more it is lighter from a bodily perspective, and it gives, for example, very golden visions, because people need to dance for 6, 7, 8, 12 hours. While, for example, when you do healing works, maybe you want more purgative ayahuasca that can help the people go really inside themselves, purge emotions, toxins, processes, etc. Stabilizing the substance to, let's say, enter the regulatory framework system, then you erase that kind of knowledge that is really based on what the people that have maybe 30, 40 years of experience in knowing the plants, which part of the plants, and how to cook ayahuasca, how to condense ayahuasca, and what kind of ayahuasca to give in each moment. So is that part that is also going to miss. So This is the problem, that in any kind of regulatory system also erase part of the traditional knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, different kinds of epistemologies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Sylvia, you have a question?
Sì, scusate, io parlo italiano. Ho avuto qualche rottura di connessione, non so, mi sono persa, qualche cosa di fondamentale o non ho capito. Molto interessante, la ringrazio per questa comunicazione, molto interessante, ma qualcosa di base, di fondamentale mi sfugge. Chi è Daime? Cioè, questo Daime è l'Ayahuasca, è santificato, è come è rappresentato. Non ho capito la base del perché l'Ayahuasca, delle sue varie manifestazioni, varianti, eccetera, originarie o mondializzate. Daime è anche un chi o no? Non mi è sfuggito.
Thank you very much. Maybe I should
Yeah,
translate
translate.
in English. So what Silvia is asking is a clarification about what is this thing called daimi. If it is ayahuasca or if it is also a kind of being, if it is a person, right? What is this thing called daimi? So in practice, what happened is that when the founder of the Santo Daime religion experienced ayahuasca with some vegetalista, some shamans in the Amazon at the beginning of the last century, what received the founder of the Santo Daime was a series of visions that he was saying, this is the Santo Daime. And Daime in Portuguese means give me, cioè dammi, give me light, give me love, give me, and there are some values, harmony and justice, that are the values of the Santo Daime religion. So Daime means give me. It's like to say, saint, give me. Dammi amore, dammi luce. So it is the specific way of calling ayahuasca in the Santo Daime religion. But clearly ayahuasca, as much as the daime, that is the same substance used in this religion, is a being. It is a spiritual being encapsulated into a liquid, transformed into liquid. So it is at the same time for the indigenous people, ayahuasca is made of the spirits of the forest. That in the Santo Daime religion becomes also Christianized. So in the Santo Daime there is also Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary. It is at the same time a vehicle to contact them, but it's also incorporating the spiritual beings. So this substance is not a liquid that has only a material dimension, but it is considered a sacred being. I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah.
Other questions? Piera, I wonder if we could turn back to the issue of kind of competing epistemologies. And how do those who, let's say, either prescribe or take ayahuasca for healing or for other therapeutic means connect that to what we would call Western medicine? So what is the relationship there? Do they see it as something compatible with Western medicine, in conflict? I'd imagine there are diverse ways that people kind of approach this, but what are some of the dynamics of that discourse?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. First, let's start to disentangle a little bit the idea of healing, because clearly here we are dealing with a ritual healing, so with a religious, spiritual understanding of healing. That in a certain way it is very broad and do not necessarily involve what we understand as curing an aspect, curing a illness. But for example, it can mean also healing the experience of it. For example, somebody could say that you cannot heal a person that is going to die, right? Maybe of a terminal cancer, but maybe the family and the same person, as they told me during one of the interviews that I did in these years of research on this topic, is the fact that maybe the family and the same person reconcile with the idea of what is going to happen soon, and through a spiritual compassion and comfort of it. So healing can really mean a lot of aspects that can or not go into conflict with Western perspectives. So we should understand also that sometimes it is something that is it is used together with other medical approaches, not necessarily one thing or another, but it's something that gives a spiritual dimension of what people are passing, what people are experiencing or passing through in their life trajectory. Then clearly when because part of my research since some years is about the potential efficacy of ayahuasca to treat addiction. Here we have, at the same time, let's say a possible conversation between medicine and religion, or let's say spirituality, that works in very different ways depending on the ritual context. So, for example, there are groups that put together alternative approaches involving the ritual use of ayahuasca, together with therapeutic approaches to the treatment of addictions, like psychoanalysis, community life, other forms of integration to social life, etc. Because clearly we always have to understand the fact that ayahuasca is in any case a chemical substance, right? So when we are dealing with psychopharmaceuticals, and in specific certain kind of psychopharmaceuticals, the coordination with doctors, psychiatrists that knows the effects of ayahuasca and the psychopharmaceuticals to do properly a trajectory between one and the other, because they cannot be taken in the same period. In other cases, for example, the treatment is based on, as we were saying, on a religious approach to addiction, so that maybe do not involve Western approaches to Western psychotherapeutic approaches or standardized approaches to addiction, exactly because people could not find a solution in this kind of context. So, there is all the discussion on, let's say, treatment-resistant depression, right? But for example, in standardized approaches to addiction, maybe there is the fact of being restricted in a community without being able to have other kind of activities, going outside, etc. For some people, this works. For many of the ayahuasca users that could be treated or healed from addiction through the ritual use of ayahuasca, this was a big part of the problem. They don't want to be in a therapeutic community. So I don't know if I answered completely your question, but there is this, it is a dynamic dialogue that is, I think that is the most interesting aspect of ayahuasca, is the possibility to challenge for sure certain certain aspects, certain norms or rules of biomedical approaches, but also it answers a search that people are having, right? Starting from what is our relationship with the substances and with the vision, with the experience that you have, or with the need to, let's say, alter your consciousness.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, let's thank Piera once again for a fantastic presentation. And
thank you very much.